My name is Brianna Wilson, and at 34 years old, millionaire architect with a story that might bring tears to your eyes. When I was 8, my biological parents gave me up simply because I was born a girl. 26 years later, my adoptive father, James, left me his entire fortune when he passed. Barely a moment after the will was read, the man who discarded me like trash showed up, expecting a handout. I'm sharing my journey of betrayal and redemption. Drop a comment to let me know where you're watching from. If you've ever had to redefine what family means, hit that subscribe button. My earliest memories are from a cozy two-story house in Portland, Oregon suburbs. It was a classic middle-class neighborhood, neat lawns, weekend barbecues, kids biking on the sidewalks. To outsiders, we seemed like the perfect American family. My biological dad, Henry Chong, was a bank account manager. Stern and traditional, he rarely smiled but demanded respect. My mom, Diane, was a homemaker, always cooking, cleaning, and keeping our home in order. She was quiet, rarely challenging my dad. I had two older brothers, Eric and Jason. Eric was 10 years older, a teenager by the time I could form clear memories. Jason, 6 years older, often found his little sister annoying. Despite our age differences, I felt we were a happy family back then. I remember family movie nights, lake picnics, and Christmas mornings tearing into presents. But even in those joyful times, I noticed small signs of trouble. My dad would glow with pride over my brother's grades or sports trophies, but with me, his praise was always quieter, less enthusiastic. I was too young to grasp why, but the seeds of his disappointment were already there. My dad came from a traditional Asian American family, where sons carried the family legacy. Daughters, like me, were seen as temporary, destined to join another family through marriage. This belief shaped him in ways that would shatter my childhood. As I grew, his favoritism became clearer. By age 5, I saw how differently he treated me. An A on my test earned a simple, good. The same grade for Jason meant high fives and dessert. My mom noticed this unfairness and tried to balance it. She taught me to cook family recipes and keep a tidy home, preparing me to be a proper wife and mother. Looking back, I see she was trying to give me value in the only way she knew. Men value a woman who can run a home, she'd say, teaching me to fold dumplings. These skills will make you special someday. I worked hard to win my dad's approval. I climbed trees with the boys, aced math and science, and brought home perfect grades. I even asked for toy trucks instead of dolls one Christmas, hoping for a glimmer of his pride. It never came. My 6th birthday was when I truly saw my place in the family. My brothers got bikes, gaming consoles, and big parties for their birthdays. Mine was a small cake, a few gifts from mom and my brothers, and a card from my dad with $20 inside. He worked late, missing most of my party. Later, I overheard him on the phone with a relative. Yeah, we did a small thing for Brianna. Just family. No need for a big fuss over a girl. That night, I cried myself to sleep, clutching that $20 bill, my worth in his eyes. I was starting to understand I'd never measure up to my brothers just because I was a girl. I was a letdown from the moment the doctor said, "It's a girl." By my 7th birthday, I was desperate to please my dad. I brought home award-winning art, top science projects, and learned about his favorite sports teams to connect with him. He'd nod or pat my head, but his focus always shifted back to my brother's successes. One night, I overheard him on the phone with his brother. "What's the point of a useless daughter?" he said, not knowing I was nearby. "The boys will carry our name, go to college, achieve something. Brianna will just marry and belong to another family. Money spent on her is for someone else's future." Those words broke my heart. Useless. A burden. Worthless. At 7, I was already a disappointment, not a cherished child. Still, I never imagined how far my dad would go to erase his unwanted daughter. Everything shifted when I was 7 and a half. One Sunday afternoon, my mom called us into the living room. With a nervous smile, she announced she was pregnant again. My dad, usually so stern, lit up with the biggest grin I'd ever seen. He hugged her tightly, a rare sight, and said, "This time, it's another son." "I know it." His voice was so sure, leaving no room for doubt. I looked at my mom, hoping for a sign she'd defend me, that a daughter might be just as loved. But she only smiled, nodding, her hand resting on her flat stomach. Our home soon became a tribute to the expected baby boy. My dad turned his office into a nursery, painting it blue, hanging blue curtains, and buying blue crib sheets. He filled it with tiny sports jerseys, mini baseball gloves, and toy cars the baby couldn't use for years. "My son will be an athlete," he'd say at dinner. I felt his kick yesterday, so strong, like a future soccer star. Family gatherings were tough. Relatives patted my mom's growing belly, saying, "The Changs need more strong boys," or, "Henry's thrilled for another son." No one thought the baby could be a girl or noticed how their words made me feel invisible, fading into the corner day by day. I tried to share their excitement, hoping it would make my dad include me. "I can help with the baby," I said one night as my mom folded blue onesies. "Girls are good at caring for babies," my dad said, not meanly, but making it clear that was all he expected from me, not success or legacy, just supporting the family's real stars. When my brother Daniel was born, my dad's joy was overwhelming. He handed out fancy cigars at the hospital, snapped countless photos, and called everyone to share news of his second perfect son. He never said who the first was, but I knew I'd never be in the running. I tried to prove my worth by helping with Daniel. At 8, I fetched diapers, made bottles, and folded laundry, desperate to show my dad I mattered. But he only saw his perfect baby boy, who now held all his attention. As Daniel became the center of everything, I faded further. I'd come home from school, and no one asked about my day. Dinners revolved around Daniel's milestones, rolling over, smiling, or cooing. My straight-A report card was barely noticed, left on the counter while they celebrated Daniel grabbing toys. I overheard hushed talks about money. My dad spoke of tightening budgets and cutting extras. I didn't know much about finances, but I felt the tension growing. One night, 6 months after Daniel's birth, I went for water and heard my parents in the living room. Hidden in the dark hallway, I listened to words that shattered my world. "We can't afford 3 kids properly," my dad said. "Eric's starting college soon, Jason has sports, and Daniel needs the best. Something's got to go." "What do you mean?" my mom asked, her voice shaky. "Brianna's young. She could adapt to a new family, a new life. There are agencies that place kids with families who can offer more than we can." I almost dropped my glass. My dad was talking about giving me away, like I was old furniture that didn't fit anymore. "She's our daughter," my mom said weakly, her words lacking strength. "She's a girl," my dad replied, as if that said it all. Any family would take a well-behaved girl. "Daniel's perfect, our future. We need to focus on what matters for our legacy." I crept back to my room, my thirst forgotten, my 8-year-old heart reeling from betrayal. They weren't giving me up because of money, like my dad claimed. I wasn't worth keeping. Daniel was worth every penny, every bit of love. I was disposable. In the weeks after, I tried to make myself essential. I did extra chores, stopped asking for clothes or books, and ate less at dinner. I made myself small, hoping they'd see I wasn't a burden. I even doted on Daniel, thinking if I proved I could care for him, they'd keep me. But their decision was final. I was a girl in a family that prized boys, and no amount of effort could change that. On a chilly autumn morning, Just after my 8th birthday, my parents called me into the living room for a serious talk. Eric was off at college, Jason at a friend's house, and baby Daniel napped in his room. It was just us three, sitting in heavy silence until my dad cleared his throat. "Brianna," he said, his tone cold, like he was talking to a stranger, "your mom and I made a tough call, but it's what's best for everyone, especially you." I knew what was coming, yet the words twisted my stomach into knots. "We're struggling with money," he went on. "With Eric in college and Daniel needing extra care, we can't give you the life you deserve." It was a lie. We weren't wealthy, but my dad's recent promotion meant money wasn't the issue. The real strain came from the lavish nursery, designer baby clothes, and Daniel's college fund, started before he was even born. "We found an agency," my mom added, staring at her folded hands. "They'll place you with a family who can give you more opportunities." "I don't need much," I pleaded, my voice shaky. "I can share Daniel's room later. I'll wear Jason's old clothes. I'll help more at home." "This isn't about your needs," my dad said sharply. "It's about what's best. Another family can give you more attention, more chances." The truth hung heavy between us, clear in his steady gaze. This wasn't about money or opportunities. I was a girl in a family that valued only boys, taking up space meant for his sons, his real legacy. "Please," I begged, tears falling. "I'll be better, perfect. Let me stay. This is my home. You're my family." My mom cried quietly, wiping tears away. For a moment, I hoped she'd fight for me. But she stayed silent, bowing to my dad's decision, as always. "It's already done," my dad said firmly. "You leave tomorrow morning. Pack one suitcase tonight. One suitcase for 8 years of my life. One bag to hold my memories, belongings, and identity." I nodded, numb, words lost in shock and pain. That night, I drifted through my room like a shadow, choosing what to keep. Clothes, a few books, my stuffed bear from my late grandma. What does an 8-year-old pick when her world is torn apart? I packed a Christmas photo of us, from before Daniel, when I still felt I belonged. I didn't sleep, staring at the ceiling's shadows, memorizing my sheets, the house's sounds, my only home. I cried silently, knowing my dad hated emotional outbursts. I wondered what I'd done wrong besides being born a girl. I promised the universe I'd be better, smarter, quieter, less female, if I could stay. Morning came too fast. My mom made pancakes, my favorite, as if that could soften the blow. I couldn't eat. My dad kept checking his watch, eager to finish this task. The drive to the agency was tense and quiet. In the back seat, my suitcase beside me, I watched familiar streets pass, wondering if I'd see them again. My mom glanced back, eyes red, but said nothing. The agency building was plain, with dull colors and a sterile smell, trying too hard to feel warm. A kind-faced woman with sad eyes led us to an office. My dad started signing papers, efficiently cutting me out of their lives. I sat frozen, unable to believe this was real. Not a nightmare, but my new truth. At goodbye, my dad shook the social worker's hand, thanking her. He patted my shoulder awkwardly. "Be good," he said, like I was off to camp, not out of his life forever. "Listen to the adults." My mom knelt, hugging me briefly. "I love you," she whispered, voice cracking. "I'm sorry." Then she followed my dad out the door. I ran to the window, watching them drive away without looking back. The social worker touched my shoulder, but I pulled away. I didn't want a stranger's comfort. I wanted my flawed family to want me. That night, in a stark group homeroom, I broke down. Sobbing into a pillow that smelled of harsh detergent, my body shook with grief and betrayal. At 8, I was abandoned by those meant to love me, all because I wasn't the son my dad wanted. Something inside me hardened. I vowed never to let anyone else decide my worth, never to beg for love, and never to forget their betrayal. The next year was a blur of new faces and temporary homes. I moved through 3 foster placements, each promising permanence but rejecting me in the end. The first was a crowded house with 6 other foster kids, where I was just another burden. The second, a childless couple, wanted a younger child after 2 months. The third seemed ideal until I saw they only cared about the state's monthly check. I withdrew deeper with each move. I stopped trying to make friends at new schools, knowing I'd leave soon. I grew quiet, watchful, and fiercely independent. Schoolwork was my only constant. Books and learning were my safe haven, where I could shine without relying on anyone. My social worker, Miss Garcia, saw my withdrawal and cynicism. She worried about the walls I built, but I thought they kept me from breaking completely. Brianna, she'd say at our monthly meetings, it's okay to trust. Not everyone will leave you. I didn't believe her. At 9, I knew even those meant to love you could toss you aside. Trust felt like a risk I couldn't take. My 4th placement was with the Robertsons, a strict religious couple. They saw foster care as a duty, not love. They gave me food and shelter, but no warmth. Mrs. Robertson watched my every step, waiting for me to break their many rules. Mr. Robertson was distant, only speaking to me at mandatory family dinners, where I had to stay silent unless addressed. The breaking point came when Mrs. Robertson's pricey vase shattered while I was at school. Though I wasn't there, she blamed me. I got no dinner and was locked in my room all weekend. Miss Garcia visited unexpectedly that Saturday and found me hungry, in tears. Within a week, I was pulled from the Robertsons' home and sent back to the group facility. As we sat in its cold visitation room, Miss Garcia said, "I've got someone in mind. He's different, a single foster parent with a great reputation." I shrugged, too jaded to hope. "Whatever," I muttered, tugging at a loose thread on my jeans. "His name's James Wilson," she went on, undeterred. "He's 60, a widower with no kids. He's fostered before, and everyone speaks highly of him. He's a retired business owner, stable, and truly wants to give a child a home." I'd heard promises like this before, all ending in letdowns. I wasn't about to trust this James Wilson, no matter how good he sounded. A week later, I was in Miss Garcia's car, driving to Portland's outskirts to meet him. We pulled into a long driveway leading to a lovely craftsman home with maple trees. My stomach knotted with familiar dread. James wasn't what I expected. Tall, lean, with silver hair and warm blue eyes that crinkled when he smiled, he greeted us in jeans and flannel, like a kind grandpa from a storybook, not the strict foster parents I knew. "You must be Brianna," he said, kneeling to my level despite stiff knees. "I've been excited to meet you. Miss Garcia says you love to read." I nodded warily, surprised he knew this about me. "I've got a big library that needs a reader like you," he said with a gentle smile. "Want to see it?" That visit was eye-opening. Instead of rules or lectures, James showed me his home, homemade bird feeders, a backyard garden, and a stunning library packed with classics, science books, and art collections. When we saw my potential room, I was amazed. It was bright, with a window seat, a desk, and empty shelves ready for my books. "I didn't decorate yet," James said. "If you stay, you can pick the colors and furniture. This would be your space." After a year in places where I was just a guest, this felt unreal. Still, I stayed cautious, expecting disappointment. 2 weeks later, James became my foster parent. I moved in with my one suitcase, certain this was temporary. I kept my distance, polite but guarded, refusing to get attached to him or his beautiful home. James didn't push. He just included me. He asked about my day at dinner, really listened, and shared his own stories. He noticed my book choices and left similar ones on my desk. He invited me to garden but never forced it. 6 weeks in, I had a nightmare, screaming, sweating, reliving my abandonment. I braced for annoyance, like with past foster parents who hated my trauma's disruptions. Instead, a soft knock came. "Anna, can I come in?" James asked gently. I wiped my tears and mumbled yes. He brought hot chocolate and sat by my bed. "Bad dream?" he asked, handing me the mug. I nodded, too shy to explain. "I had them too, after my wife died," he said, sharing something personal. "Our minds work through hard stuff in sleep." He didn't pry or offer empty words. He sat until I calmed, sipping the drink. "Want me to stay close?" he asked. I nodded, expecting a chair. Instead, he said he'd be outside my door. Next morning, I learned he'd sat in the hallway all night to keep me safe. It cracked the wall around my heart. For 6 months, James was steady and kind. He attended every school event, pinned my awards on the fridge, took me to the doctor when sick, and helped with homework. He shared his love for architecture, showing me Portland's unique buildings and their stories. Slowly, I began to trust. I left books on his desk, sharing silent recommendations. I talked about my day unprompted. I stopped flinching at his quick movements. Eventually, I stopped waiting for him to send me away. After a year, I felt something new: safety. For a kid abandoned by her parents, that was the first step to healing. On my 10th birthday, James took me to my favorite diner, then the courthouse. Confused, I listened as he explained we had a judge to see. "I want to adopt you, Anna," he said, his eyes warm. "If that's what you want." I stared, shocked. "You want me forever?" "More than anything," he said. "You're the daughter I never had. I want to make it official, give you my name, and promise you'll always have a place in this world." Tears came, hopeful ones, not like the despair I'd sworn off. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, please." 3 months later, it was official. I was Brianna Wilson, James Wilson's daughter, not a foster kid, but chosen, wanted just as I was. After the adoption, James took me to pick paint and furniture for my room. "This is your forever home," he said, browsing color samples. "Make it yours." I picked soft blue walls, white trim, and yellow accents. James spent a weekend painting with me, never minding my clumsy strokes or our mess. When done, he surprised me with a custom bookshelf he'd built for my window seat. With my room redone, I started to change too. James's steady love gave me space to heal, not just survive. He saw I still struggled with trust and fear of abandonment, so he set me up with Dr. Laura Stevens, a child psychologist who knew adoption trauma. Dr. Laura became my rock. In her warm office, filled with art supplies and cozy chairs, I began unpacking the pain of being given up. "Your parents' choice was their failure, not yours," she'd say softly. "Their inability to see your worth doesn't define you." With James's constant support and Dr. Laura's help, I started to believe I was enough. I was lovable. I wasn't discarded because of my flaws, but because of my parents' warped views. James cheered on my schoolwork without pushing. He noticed I loved building and design, probably from our trips to see cool buildings. For my 11th birthday, he gave me engineering blocks, not just toys. I built complex structures for hours, with James watching proudly, tossing in tips. School became more than a hideout. With a stable home, I poured my energy into excelling, not just getting by. Teachers noticed my new confidence, how I raised my hand and joined study groups, stepping out from my invisible shield. In 7th grade, Zoe Martinez decided we'd be friends. Bold and popular, she sat at my library table and said, "You read the coolest books." Let's talk about them. That sparked my first real friendship. Zoe was everything I wasn't, outgoing, from a big, loving family, but she saw something in me. With James's nudge, I let her in slowly. When Zoe invited me for a sleepover, James drove me, helped pack my bag, and promised he was a call away. At her house, I saw a real family dinner, full of teasing, jokes, and parents who loved all their kids the same. I called James the next day, not to leave, but to tell him how much I valued the home he'd built for us, even if it was just us two. By high school, my love for architecture grew strong. James fed it with books, museum trips, and visits to amazing buildings nationwide. For my 16th birthday, he gave me professional drafting tools and a drawing table. "You see things differently, Brianna," he said as I admired the tools. "You know, buildings aren't just about looks or use, but about making people feel safe and valued. You'll create something special someday." His belief was my bedrock, letting me dream big, dreams the scared 8-year-old with one suitcase couldn't imagine. I researched top architecture programs, a goal once unthinkable. James never pushed college choices but made sure money wasn't an issue. "I've saved for your education since you arrived," he said when I mentioned costs. "Focus on getting into your dream schools. I'll handle the rest." Senior year was a whirlwind of applications, portfolios, and nerves. James drove me to campus tours, helped organize my materials, and cheered every win. When Cornell's architecture program accepted me, he framed the letter, bragging to everyone about his daughter who'd shaped skylines. The night before college, we sat on his porch swing, stargazing. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" I asked, surprised. "I owe you everything." "For letting me be your dad," he said, voice heavy with feeling. "Susan and I couldn't have kids, our biggest heartbreak. After she died, I thought that dream was gone. Then you came, a strong, amazing girl who needed a home as much as I needed you. You made me a father, Brianna." I rested my head on his shoulder, no longer scared to show love. "We saved each other," I said. College was tough but thrilling. I dove into my studies, eager to make James proud and build a future worth his faith in me. We talked weekly, and I came home every holiday. Each visit confirmed I had a true home, a real dad, a place I belonged. I graduated with honors and job offers galore. At commencement, James cried openly as I got my diploma. At our celebration dinner, he gave me a velvet box with a silver house key pendant. "You have our home's key," he said. "This is for the future you'll build, one limited only by your dreams and drive." I took a job at a top Portland architecture firm to stay near James. At 24, I bought a fixer-upper home, and we spent weekends renovating it together. My career soared with innovative, people-focused designs. By 30, I was a senior architect leading projects. James was my biggest fan, attending every gallery opening, collecting news clippings, and calling me, my daughter, the architect, to everyone. But time started to show on James. Subtle signs, hand tremors, forgetfulness, slower steps, crept in. When I worried, he laughed it off. "I'm 82, Brianna. Aging's not a disease. It's just life." I accepted his words, dreading the thought of losing the one person who never left me. But as my career thrived, a shadow loomed over our shared life. By 32, I was a top Pacific Northwest architect. My designs won awards, and Architectural Digest featured my community center, blending eco-friendly materials with spaces for connection. But success couldn't hide my worry for James. During our weekly dinner at his house, I saw he barely ate. His hearty appetite was gone, his weight dropping. His clothes hung loose, his strong hands frail around his fork. "Dad," I said softly, using the word I'd grown to love over the years, "we need to talk about your health." Something's not right, and ignoring it isn't helping us. James put down his fork and sighed, a sound that chilled me. I wanted to protect you from this a bit longer, he said. But you're too sharp, Brianna. He took my hand. I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Diagnosed 3 months ago. The room spun. 3 months? Why didn't you tell me? There's got to be treatments, specialists, trials. We have options. We can fight. He shook his head. I've seen top doctors. The cancer's too far gone. Treatments might add a few painful months, but they'd steal the quality of life I have left. You're giving up? I asked, tears falling. You can't leave me. Not you. My sweet girl, he said, his eyes full of love and pain. I'm not giving up or leaving by choice. I've had a beautiful life, especially these 22 years with you. But I need something hard from you. Anything, I said instantly. Help me die with the dignity I've lived by, he said. Then live your life fully, knowing you brought me more joy than I ever dreamed. The next 6 months were a lesson in grace. James organized his affairs, meeting his lawyer, sorting possessions, writing letters to loved ones. I took leave from work to care for him, determined to fill his final days with the love he'd given me. We flipped through old photos, watched classic movies, and talked deeply about life, love, and what might come next. James saw death as his next adventure, unafraid. The only thing I regret, he said one evening on his porch, watching the sunset, is missing the buildings you'll design, the life you'll live. But I'll be watching from somewhere, Brianna. I know it. On a calm spring morning, sunlight pouring through his window, birds singing in his beloved garden, James took his last breath. I held his hand, sharing stories of our life, telling him I'd be okay, that he could rest. His passing was gentle, a quiet fade, not a fight. The grief was overwhelming, yet beautiful in its depth. I loved him so fully, and he loved me without condition. The pain matched the gift of his presence. Even in my sorrow, I felt gratitude, for being chosen by this incredible man, for every moment we shared. His funeral drew dozens, former foster kids he mentored, business friends, kind neighbors. I stood strong giving his eulogy, honoring him with courage despite my aching heart. James showed me family isn't blood or duty, I told the crowd. It's choice, love, and showing up daily. He chose me when my own family didn't, saving my life and making it beautiful. Zoe stood by me, her hand on my back, my heart's sister for 20 years. Her quiet strength steadied me as my world felt unmoored. 3 weeks later, James's lawyer, Richard Thornton, called for a meeting. We need to discuss the estate, he said. James left clear instructions. I hadn't thought much about James's finances. I knew he was comfortable from his manufacturing business, but he lived simply, valuing moments over things. At Richard's office, I was stunned. James was worth far more than most knew, he said, showing me documents. His investments, properties, and stocks total about $27 million. I gaped. $27 million? That's impossible. Richard smiled. James was a smart investor, but he didn't flaunt it. He pushed a paper toward me. His will names you, Brianna, as his sole heir. The news hit local papers. Portland architect inherits fortune, and Wilson fortune goes to adopted daughter. Grieving and uneasy with the spotlight, I avoided the attention. A month after the will reading, as I grappled with my new reality, strange calls started. An unknown man asked for me, then hung up. I brushed it off as a wrong number or a reporter fishing for a story. The calls kept coming, daily, sometimes weekly, always the same, my name, silence, click. I told Richard during an estate meeting. It might be nothing, he said, but with your inheritance, be careful. Change your number and limit who has it. I did, but the unease stayed. Someone was seeking me, likely tied to the money. I added a security system at home and stayed alert. 3 months after James's death, my doorbell rang while I worked from home. The security camera showed a man in his 60s, dressed well but worn, his face stirring a faint memory. "Who's this?" I asked through the intercom, not opening the door. "Anna, Brianna Chang," he said, using my old name, untouched in 24 years. "It's your father, Henry Chang." Time froze. Henry Chang, the man who threw me away at 8 for being a girl, was on my doorstep, claiming to be my father. I wanted to ignore him, pretend I wasn't home. But James's 24 years of love gave me strength I never knew. I opened the door but blocked the way. "I'm Brianna Wilson," I said icily. "What do you want?" He seemed shocked by my coldness, expecting warmth. "Brianna, I've looked for you for years," he said, his face a mix of pleading and fake sincerity. "The news about your inheritance helped me find you." "Convenient," I said, steady despite my inner storm. 24 years of silence, and you show up weeks after my inheritance hits the news. "It's not like that," he insisted. "Your mom passed 10 years ago. Her dying wish was for me to find you, to make things right." His tears didn't fool me. Years of therapy taught me to spot manipulation. "I've always loved you, Brianna," he said. "Giving you up was my biggest mistake." I studied him, the towering figure from my childhood now small and worn. His expensive clothes were frayed, his watch a cheap knockoff. Those details told me everything. "I need time to think," I said. "I'm not ready for this talk today." He nodded quickly. "Of course. Here's my number. I'm at the Marriott downtown. Call me when you're ready. We have so much to catch up on." I took his card without a glance. "Goodbye, Mr. Chang." "Please," he said as I shut the door, "call me Dad." The door closed before he saw my reaction. Dad, a word he lost 24 years ago, a title that belonged only to James Wilson in my heart. That night, I called Zoe and told her about his visit. "Do you think he's been looking for you?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. "But I'll find out." The next day, I hired a private investigator to dig into Henry Chang's life. A week later, the report confirmed my doubts. Henry was broke. His banking career ended 15 years ago over shady dealings. He'd bounced between jobs, none lasting long, and had a gambling habit that left him in debt. His home was foreclosed, he lived in a cheap rental, not the Marriott he claimed. Worse, there was no record of him searching for me, no investigators, no agency inquiries, nothing until my inheritance hit the news 3 months ago. The investigator found my brothers too. Eric, a surgeon in Boston, had a wife and 3 kids. Jason, a science teacher in Seattle, had a wife and 2. Both cut Henry off years ago for his money-grubbing ways. Daniel, the son who replaced me, barely spoke to him after a college fallout. With this, I agreed to meet Henry at a busy restaurant. I got there early, picking a table with a clear view of the door. He showed up 15 minutes late, full of excuses. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, his smile too eager. "You're such a beautiful, successful woman. I always knew you'd be." "Did you?" I asked coolly. "Funny, since you gave me up for being a girl, worthless to you." His smile wavered. "That's not true. We were broke, and we thought another family would give you more. More than my brothers, especially Daniel, your perfect son." I kept my tone even, refusing to let him see my pain. "Let's not twist history, Mr. Chang. You threw me out because I was a girl, less valuable than your boys." "It was complicated," he said, eyes shifting. "I messed up. We all did. I'm here to fix things. Are you? Or are you here because you heard I inherited millions from my real dad and want a piece? His face hardened, the fake remorse gone, revealing greed. We're family. Blood matters. This James Wilson was just some guy who took you in. I leaned in, voice low. James was more of a father in 1 week than you were in 8 years. He chose me, valued me, loved me without conditions. He was rich, Henry sneered, showing his true self. Anyone can play hero with millions. So that's why you're here, for the money, he snapped, dropping the act. You owe me. I gave you life. You'd be nothing without me. You're half right, I said, standing. I wouldn't be me if you hadn't abandoned me. Your rejection led me to James. For that accidental gift, I thank you. But that's all you'll get, gratitude for staying out of my life. You're just an ungrateful girl who got lucky, he shouted as I walked away, loud enough to turn heads. I didn't look back. I left that restaurant, hoping to leave Henry Chung behind forever. But a man desperate enough to abandon his child for being a girl is desperate enough to do worse for money, as I'd soon learn. After facing Henry, I felt free but shattered. His words confirmed what I'd always known: he never loved me, never saw me as his daughter, only as a ticket to wealth now. Even with years of healing and James's love, his rejection stung. I called Zoe, who came over with wine and her steady support. I shouldn't be this hurt, I said, staring out my apartment window at the city lights. I knew who he was. Why does it still cut so deep? You're human, Zoe said, hugging me. There's still a little girl in you who just wanted her dad's love. That night, I mourned, not for Henry, but for the father he never was, for the childhood I could have had if my gender didn't define my worth. I cried until I was empty, releasing 24 years of pain. The next morning, I called Dr. Laura, my therapist and friend. She saw me that afternoon. You're facing a reopened wound, she said as I shared the meeting. But you're not that helpless 8-year-old anymore. You have strength and tools you didn't have then. I just want him gone, I told Dr. Laura. I've built something good, and I won't let him ruin it. Then set that boundary, she said. You're in control now, Brianna. You decide who gets to be in your life, your heart, and your resources. With her advice and my own strength, I had Richard send Henry a cease and desist letter, threatening legal action if he contacted me again. I beefed up security at home and work and told my assistant to screen all calls and visitors. For 2 weeks, it was quiet. I hoped Henry had given up. Then the harassment ramped up. Late-night calls from blocked numbers. Anonymous emails about fake family health issues. A letter in my mailbox claiming he was dying and needed closure. The breaking point came when he ambushed me in my office parking garage, stepping out from between cars. You can't ignore me forever, he said, his voice bouncing off the concrete. I'm your father. No, I shot back, phone ready to call security. You lost that role 24 years ago. James Wilson was my father. You're just a man who made a bad choice and now wants my success. His face twisted with anger. That old man stole you from us. He turned you against your family. We'd have come for you if we could have afforded it. His lies, spitting on James's memory, broke something in me. Stop, I said, my voice fierce. Stop lying. My investigator found Eric and Jason, they cut you off for your selfishness. Daniel hasn't spoken to you in years. You never once looked for me in 24 years. His rage turned to cunning. Family forgives, Brianna. Your mom would want you to forgive me. Don't use her memory to trick me, I snapped. You said she wanted you to find me, but she filed for divorce 15 years ago over your gambling and abuse. She died alone because you pushed everyone away. Security arrived, answering my quiet call. As they led Henry away, he yelled, "This isn't over. I'll get what's mine." That night, I decided Henry wouldn't taint James's legacy. I'd turn this pain into something meaningful, honoring the man who saved me. The next day, I called Richard. "I want to start the James Wilson Foundation for Family Building," I said. "It'll help kids abandoned or aging out of foster care." Richard loved it. "James would be so proud." "What's your vision for it?" "Housing for young adults leaving foster care, college scholarships, mentorship, and a focus on girls in STEM, especially architecture and engineering." I paused, seeing it clearly. "I'll fund it with a big chunk of the inheritance." This is James's true legacy. For 6 months, I dove headfirst into building the foundation. Every detail consumed me, from planning the programs to choosing the right people to run them. It wasn't just work, it was my lifeline. Each new initiative felt like a step away from the pain Henry had stirred up. I remember the late nights at my desk, sketching out ideas for housing assistance. Young adults leaving foster care often have nowhere to go. I wanted to change that. The foundation would provide safe apartments, a place to start fresh. Thinking about it brought back memories of my own unstable days in group homes. Then there were the scholarships. I envisioned funding education for kids like me, who found solace in books and learning. Mentorship programs came next, pairing them with guides who could offer the support James gave me. And the STEM initiative for girls? That was personal. I wanted to empower them in fields where women are often overlooked, just as I had been. As we identified our first beneficiaries, each story hit close to home. One teen reminded me of myself, quiet, withdrawn, but full of potential. Helping her felt like honoring James. It turned my grief into action, my hurt into hope. The work healed me in ways I didn't expect. Mornings started with purpose. I'd wake early, brew coffee, and review applications. Seeing progress mended the cracks Henry had reopened. I felt stronger, more in control. Henry didn't stop completely. His attempts trickled in, a random email here, a voicemail there. But they grew rarer. He must have sensed my resolve. I didn't waver. Each time, I forwarded it to Richard for a legal response. No direct contact from me. That boundary protected my peace. I focused on the foundation instead. We held our first meeting with potential mentors. Listening to volunteers share their stories inspired me. One woman had been adopted late in life, much like me. Her enthusiasm mirrored mine. We bonded over shared experiences, laughing about the small victories that meant everything. Outreach was key. I visited foster homes and spoke at events. Sharing bits of my story connected with the kids. Their eyes lit up when I talked about overcoming rejection. It reminded me why this mattered. James's legacy wasn't just money, it was impact. One day, amid the bustle, an unexpected email arrived from Jason. My brother, 6 years older, the one who'd sometimes slipped me treats as a kid. "I saw your foundation in the news," he wrote. The words stopped me cold. He explained how he'd recognized my name right away. Despite the years, he'd thought of me often. In college, he'd tried searching, but sealed adoption records blocked him. He understood if I wanted distance after what our family did. But he ended with, "I never forgot my little sister." I stared at the screen, emotions swirling. Part of me wanted to delete it. Another part wondered about connection. Henry had poisoned so much, but Jason? He was just a boy back then. I talked it over with Dr. Laura. We met in her office, the same cozy space from my childhood sessions. "This could be healing," she said. "Or it could reopen wounds. Take your time. Trust your gut." After days of thinking, I replied, We set a meeting at a quiet cafe near my office. My hands shook as I drove there. What if this was another trap? But deep down, I needed to know. Jason approached my table, a man I didn't recognize yet with eyes that sparked memories. Those eyes had winked at me when he'd sneaked desserts past our dad. Now, they held tears. Brianna, he said, voice cracking. You look so much like Mom. Thank you for seeing me. We sat, the air thick with unspoken history. I ordered coffee to steady myself. He did the same. Small talk started, weather, traffic, before diving deeper. He asked about my life. I shared cautiously, my adoption, career, the foundation. His face softened with admiration. You've built something amazing, he said. Then he opened up. His job as a teacher, his family, wife and kids. But regret shadowed his words. I wish I could have done something back then, he said. Our conversation stumbled at first. 24 years of silence weighed heavy. Our father's actions loomed like a ghost. But as Jason spoke of his own fallout with Henry, walls cracked. Henry had demanded money from him too, after his divorce from Mom. Jason refused, cutting ties. He's toxic, Jason said. I'm sorry you faced him again. I nodded, sharing my recent encounters. It felt strange, bonding over shared pain. But it was real. For the first time, I didn't feel alone in that family mess. I was too young to stop what happened, Jason repeated, eyes down. You were gone before I understood. In college, I searched everywhere, agencies, online, but nothing. It wasn't your fault, I reassured him. We were both kids. Blame lies with the adults. He talked about Mom. How she'd changed after leaving Henry. The abuse had worn her down, but she found strength in her final years. She regretted giving you up every day, he said. It haunted her. Hearing that mixed my feelings. Anger lingered, she hadn't fought for me. But pity crept in. She was trapped in her own way. Victim and enabler. I couldn't fully forgive, but understanding softened the edges. We lingered over coffee, stories flowing easier. Laughter even slipped in, recalling silly childhood moments before everything soured. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Jason and I agreed to keep talking. Emails first, maybe calls. Rebuilding a sibling bond after decades? It seemed possible, fragile but real. He mentioned Eric, our oldest brother. He's dealt with Dad's mess too, Jason warned. But he'd like to meet if you're open. I wasn't ready yet. One step at a time. But the door cracked open. A week later, Henry's latest ploy arrived, a letter from a cheap lawyer threatening to contest James's adoption. Fabricated claims, pure desperation. Richard reviewed it. Baseless, he said. He's grasping at straws for cash. I'm ending this, I told Richard. Arrange a meeting. You, me, Henry, and his lawyer. We gathered in Richard's sleek conference room. High ceilings, polished table, designed to intimidate. Henry strutted in, smug, convinced he'd won. His lawyer fidgeted, briefcase battered. I'm glad you saw a reason, Henry sneered. I'm here to set things straight, I cut in. No money for you. Ever. Your threats are empty. Push them, and I'll sue for harassment and distress. The lawyer shifted. Family courts can side with biological parents, even after surrender. Not after 24 years and a sealed adoption, Richard countered coolly. Plus, no contact attempts. It's laughable. I faced Henry. One offer, I'll fund counseling for your gambling. That's all. He pounded the table. You ungrateful, his lawyer silenced him quickly. I'm your father, Henry growled. You owe me. James taught me real fatherhood is love, not genes, I said evenly. He created family through kindness, not obligation. You donated DNA. That's it. No claim on my life or money. I rose, delivering the final blow. This ends here. More contact, restraining order and lawsuits. I'm not your discarded child anymore. I'm Brianna Wilson. I owe you zero. The room fell silent. Henry's smugness crumbled. That meeting shifted everything. His harassment vanished. Whether he accepted defeat or sought new victims, I didn't care. Peace returned. Jason updated me later. Henry fled Portland, probably chasing casino dreams in Las Vegas. Good riddance. 6 months on, the foundation launched its first project, a welcoming apartment complex for foster care graduates. 20 affordable units, a vibrant community center, counseling on site. It was real, tangible help. The ribbon cutting drew a crowd, supporters, media, kids we'd help. I stood at the podium, heart full, speaking of James. I shared how his love transformed me. One person's choice can rewrite a life. Our foundation aimed to multiply that. Family isn't blood, I said. It's choosing to commit, to show up daily. James picked me when my birth family didn't. He gave me home, purpose, and self-worth. Snipping the ribbon on James Wilson House, I sensed him near, his pride warming me. His wealth now fueled change, touching lives beyond us. That evening, in my home, I sank into James's old chair. The photo from my graduation caught my eye, his arm around me, our smiles bright. We did it, Dad, I whispered. Broken to beautiful. My journey, from rejected girl to confident woman, was grueling. The scar from my parents' abandonment lingered, shaping me without breaking me. James's love mended it, my strength forged it into wisdom, the foundation channeled it into purpose. Surveying my world, successful designs, loyal friends, I knew peace. Henry's blindness never diminished my value. It waited for James's kind eyes and big heart. He saw me. Now, we'd see others. Have you redefined family? Found support beyond blood? Share below. If my story moves you, like and subscribe for more resilience tales. Family is who journeys with you. Thanks for listening. Build the family you deserve.